What if I told you that death doesn't lead to eternal rest, but instead to the most perilous journey of your life? Imagine this. Your soul must pass through 12 gates, guarded by demons, fight a cosmic serpent, and then face a final examination where your heart is weighed on a scale. Make a single mistake and your very existence will be wiped out forever. Sounds like a horror film script? No, these were the core beliefs of the ancient Egyptians. Today, we're going deep into the heart of their underworld, Duat. I will guide you along the Egyptian soul's entire path, from the moment of death to the gates of paradise. You'll discover what truly lies hidden behind the golden masks of the pharaohs and the mysterious hieroglyphs of the Book of the Dead. Get ready. This journey is about to change everything you thought you knew about the afterlife. But before we plunge into the darkness of Duat, let's cover the basics. For the Egyptians, death was never the end. It was simply a transition into another state, one that required meticulous preparation. They believed that a person was composed of several components. The primary elements were the physical body, or the Keet, and two distinct souls, the Ka and the Bay. The Ka was the vital life force, the person's double, which remained in the tomb after death and was sustained by offerings. The Bay represented the individual's personality, character, and all the unique traits that defined them. It was the Ba, often depicted as a human-headed bird, that embarked on this perilous trek through the underworld. The ultimate goal of this journey was reunification with the Ka to become the Ash, the transfigured, enlightened, eternal spirit. And so the Ba wouldn't get lost or succumb to the dangers. It needed a guidebook, the famous Book of the Dead, a collection of spells and maps placed inside the tomb of every wealthy Egyptian. And so, the journey begins the moment life ends. As the body was prepared for mummification, the priest performed the crucial ritual, the opening of the mouth and eyes. Using special implements, they would symbolically touch the mouth, eyes and ears of the mummy, restoring its ability to see, speak, and hear in the underworld. This wasn't merely a farewell ceremony. It was the essential activation of the body's magical potential. The ancient Egyptians believed that without this ritual, the soul would remain forever blind and mute, unable to utter the necessary spells for self-defense and safe passage. The tomb was never just a grave. It was the permanent home for the Ka soul and the essential launchpad for the Ba. Its walls were covered in vivid scenes of the coming afterlife and inscribed with text from the Book of the Dead. The tomb itself was stocked with everything necessary for eternity, from food and fine furniture to servants in the form of Ushabti figurines. Everything was finally ready for the greatest adventure of all. Once the final rituals are complete, the Ba soul, often depicted as a bird, takes flight from the tomb and heads west to where the sun dies each evening before beginning its nocturnal journey. This is the very entrance to the Duat. It is crucial to understand that the Duat is not hell. Instead, it is a complex, multi-layered afterlife, a mirror image of the world of the living, yet saturated with profound dangers and powerful magic. There are no eternal torments for sinners in the Christian sense. The worst fate imaginable was complete destruction, oblivion. The Duat is a realm defined by trials. Its landscapes shift drastically, ranging from lakes of fire to impassable deserts, and it is populated by both powerful gods and horrifying demons. To survive this journey, merely living a righteous life wasn't enough. You needed knowledge, cunning, and above all, a reliable guide. The Book of the Dead. This book was, quite literally, both the map and the complete collection of cheat codes for this ultimate quest. Upon reaching the threshold of the Duat, the soul is met by one of Egypt's most recognizable deities, Anubis, the jackal-headed god. Contrary to popular depictions, he was not an evil deity. Quite the opposite. Anubis serves as the deceased's primary helper and spiritual guide. He is the god of embalming, the keeper of the necropolises, and the one who literally takes the soul by the hand, guiding it through the first and most confusing paths of the underworld. His jackal head is highly symbolic. Actual jackals frequently prowled the edges of the desert and burial grounds, leading the Egyptians to view them as vigilant guardians, protecting the eternal rest of the departed. Anubis's primary duty was to ensure the soul was fully prepared for its journey and to conduct it safely to the Great Judgment. He acted as a true protector, driving away minor evil spirits and keeping the soul firmly on the correct path. Encountering Anubis was the first powerful indication that the burial rituals had been properly completed, signifying that the gods had accepted the deceased into their divine realm. The Bast soul then joins the glorious retinue of Ra, the great sun god. Every night Ra descends into the Duat aboard his solar bark to traverse the subterranean Nile, intending to be reborn the following morning in the east. This voyage is divided into 12 hours, and each hour represents a new realm of the Duat, marked by different gates and unique trials. The soul of the deceased becomes a vital passenger on this bark. Their mission is not merely to observe, but to actively assist Ra. They must recite potent incantations, ward off demonic creatures, and uphold the divine cosmic order, known as Ma'at. This was more than just a passage. It was a sacred mission. Ra's successful traversal of the Duat guaranteed the dawn of a new day for the entire world of the living. Thus, every departed soul became a participant in the cosmic battle between light and darkness, and the fate of the universe hinged upon their actions. The first hour of the night brought the first gate, known as the Mistress of Dread. Each of the 12 gates of the Duat was guarded by terrifying sentinels. These included knife-wielding serpents, demons with the heads of crocodiles, or entities whose forms were woven entirely from flame. To gain passage, mere pleading was insufficient. The deceased had to prove that they were truly the knowledgeable one. They were required to recite the secret name of the gate, the name of the sentinel, and the name of the gatekeeper. All these crucial identifiers were catalogued within the Book of the Dead, serving as the first true test of the soul's knowledge and magical preparedness. Should the soul fail to answer correctly, the sentinels barred the way, forcing it to wander the outer darkness, vulnerable to being devoured by lesser demons. Successful navigation of the first gate meant the deceased was deemed worthy to continue their journey alongside Ra. The sunbark pressed onward, sinking ever deeper into the profound darkness of the netherworld. With the second and third gates, the trials grew significantly harder. The landscape of Duat became increasingly hostile. The soul beheld lakes of fire, boiling cauldrons and rivers of acid, where those who failed to proceed were tormented. These were not necessarily sinners, but rather the ignorant, those who had failed to prepare for the rigours of the afterlife. Giant, fire-breathing serpents rose up to block the path of Ra's solar bark. The deceased had to do more than just know the names of the guardians. They needed to recite powerful incantations to ward off the attacks of these monsters. For instance, spell number 33 from the Book of the Dead was designed specifically to counter the serpents, stating, "Oh, serpent Rerek, do not approach. Geb and Shu stand against you." Every word carried immense power, and the slightest mistake in pronunciation could prove fatal. The entire journey quickly devolved into a true battle for survival. Oh, the things a soul encountered in those gloomy lands. Duat hosted an entire bestiary of monsters, all spawned from primordial chaos. Beyond the countless snakes lurked baboon demons armed with wicked staffs, and creatures combining human bodies with the heads of scarabs or crocodiles, all waiting to ambush unwary souls. We must not forget the headless demons, their eyes and mouths chillingly located on their chests. Among the most horrific was the aptly named demon, the Donkey Eater, which preyed on souls that had strayed too far from Ra's solar bark. These horrific beings were, in fact, the living embodiment of real-world dangers, predators, disease, and starvation. Fortunately, the Book of the Dead provided detailed instructions on exactly how to fight them. Certain spells allowed the soul to transform, taking the mighty form of a god, perhaps a falcon or a crocodile, specifically to terrify the demons into retreat. Other incantations, meanwhile, rendered the soul completely invisible. It was truly a magical war of survival. But all those monsters paled in comparison to the chief enemy of Ra and the entire cosmic order. His name was Apophis, or Apep. He was the colossal serpent, the embodiment of primordial chaos, darkness, and utter destruction. Every night, as Ra's solar bark sailed across the subterranean Nile, Apophis would attempt to halt its journey. He would either drink the river dry, attempting to strand the vessel, or try to swallow the sun god whole. Ra's entire entourage, including powerful gods like Set and the accompanying souls of the deceased, would engage him in fierce combat. They pierced him with spears, bound him with magical chains, and chanted powerful incantations to weaken his strength. Even the souls of the deceased had a duty. They were required to shout curses and condemnations toward Apophis, aiding the gods in their struggle. This battle was the absolute climax of every nocturnal voyage. If Apophis were ever victorious, the sun would fail to rise, and the world would be plunged into eternal darkness. Triumph over the serpent guaranteed rebirth and the continuation of life itself. As the 4th and 5th hours of the night arrived, Ra's solar bark entered the mysterious domain of Rostau. This region was considered the underworld counterpart to the Giza Plateau, the very kingdom of the falcon-headed god Sokar, another powerful deity of the dead. Here, the landscape shifted dramatically, becoming desolate and winding. The bark was forced to navigate narrow, sandy corridors, much like the passages deep within the pyramids themselves. Rostau was a place shrouded in profound secrets and mysteries. It was believed to hold the hidden pathways that connected the realm of the dead with the world of the living. This realm was guarded by powerful entities, the Sphinxes and the twin lions of Akka, who stood as eternal keepers of yesterday and tomorrow. To successfully navigate these treacherous lands, one required not only the correct incantations, but also a precise knowledge of the secret routes. A single wrong turn could trap the soul in an eternal dead end. This entire stage ultimately symbolized the necessary descent through the deepest and most concealed levels of the subconscious mind. It is the 6th hour of the night, midnight. Ra's bark has now reached the very heart of the Duat, its deepest, darkest chamber. It is here, submerged in the primordial waters, that the body of Osiris rests. Osiris, the first king, murdered by his brother Set, yet resurrected as the sovereign ruler of the afterlife. In this profound instant, the soul of Ra symbolically merges with the soul of Osiris. It is a moment of mystical unity, encompassing death and rebirth in a single entity. The sun god, the giver of life, meets the god of the dead, the ruler of eternity. For the soul of the deceased, this is one of the most sacred moments of their journey. They witness the very wellspring of renewal, granting them the hope for their own resurrection. Here, in absolute stillness and profound darkness, the strength is drawn for the second half of the path, the road leading toward the eventual dawn and the final judgment. Above all, this moment symbolizes that even within the most profound darkness, the spark of life endures. As the soul passed through the 7th and 8th gates, it encountered an entirely new series of trials. This time, the examination wasn't just about magical power, it was a profound test of intellect. The gatekeepers and local deities would pose the deceased vexing questions and complex riddles centered on mythology and theology. For instance, they might challenge the soul with questions like, who is born without a mother? Or, what has many eyes yet cannot see? The correct answers were hidden deep within the sacred texts. The soul needed to demonstrate not just a rote memorization of spells, but a genuine comprehension of the divine order and the very structure of the cosmos. This was, fundamentally, an examination of wisdom. Failure meant the soul was deemed unworthy of approaching the Hall of Two Truths, where Osiris held court. These trials underscored the critical importance of knowledge in the Egyptian worldview. Wisdom was valued no less than righteousness because only the truly wise could understand the laws of the universe and successfully follow them. Between the 9th and 10th hours of the night, Ra's barge sailed past the fields of punishment. This is where the deceased soul witnessed the horrific fate awaiting those who had failed the trials or been condemned at the final judgment. They were known as the enemies of Ra, or the cursed. Demons tore them limb from limb, cast them into fiery pits, or forced them to walk eternally upside down. It is crucial to understand, however, that this was not a concept of eternal hell. Punishment in the Duat was absolute, the complete annihilation of the soul, a second death, after which nothing remained. The The bodies of the wicked were incinerated, and their very shadows were scattered to the winds. Witnessing this agony served as the ultimate warning for the newly departed soul. It was a stark reminder of the high stakes involved, urging them to gather their strength for the final and most challenging trials ahead. Essentially, this served as shock therapy, intended to steel the soul's resolve to ultimately reach the blissful Fields of Iaru. The 11th gate. The tension is palpable. As Ra's vessel draws closer to the exit of the Duat, the trials intensify, becoming truly severe. Here, the gatekeepers tested not mere knowledge, but the inherent moral purity of the soul. They possess the power to conjure illusions, tempting the deceased with boundless wealth, or absolute power, a final check of their integrity and incorruptibility. The soul had to demonstrate complete mastery over itself, proving unwavering devotion to the principles of Mythology, truth, cosmic order, and justice. This was also the stage for the climactic battle against the serpent Apep, who exerted his final desperate strength to prevent the sun from rising into the world of the living. The deceased was required to deploy their entire arsenal of protective spells and summon every ounce of their willpower to aid Ra in subduing the monster. This harrowing hour served as the dress rehearsal before the ultimate judgment. The soul was finally purged of the last vestiges of earthly fears and mortal desires, preparing to stand spotless before the great Osiris. The 12th gate, the final hour of the night. The gate was known as the revealer of Ra's beauty. Passing through it, the barge emerged from the darkness of the Duat, preparing to ascend the eastern horizon as the morning sun, the god Khepri, embodied by the scarab beetle. For the world of the living, dawn was breaking. But for the soul of the deceased, while this marked the end of the dangerous journey on the barge, their trials were far from over. The soul stepped ashore and headed toward the Hall of Two Truths, where the most pivotal moment of the afterlife awaited, the judgment of Osiris. Having successfully navigated the 12 gates, defeated monsters, and proven its wisdom, the soul had finally earned the right to stand before the Great Lord and demonstrate its worthiness for eternal life. The air was thick with anticipation and trepidation. The final examination lay ahead. And so, the soul enters the Hall of Two Truths, also known as the Hall of Ma'at. It is a vast, majestic chamber. At the far end, Osiris himself sits enthroned, clad in white funerary wrappings and holding the symbols of his kingship. His skin is a vibrant green, the colour symbolising rebirth and renewal. Flanking him on either side are the 42 assessor gods, each responsible for judging a specific human transgression. In the centre of the hall stand the massive golden scales. The atmosphere is thick with solemnity and palpable tension. The soul of the deceased, guided by Anubis, approaches the throne and prostrates itself. Now it must deliver the most critical address of its existence, the negative confession. This was no desperate plea for forgiveness. It was a firm declaration of innocence. The soul was required to prove that its life faithfully adhered to the principles of Ma'at, the universal cosmic order and justice. The confession of denial, or negative confession, was a unique moral code central to ancient Egyptian belief. The deceased would address each of the 42 specific divine judges by name, declaring that they were innocent of the corresponding sin. Examples included: I have not killed, I have not stolen, I have not lied, I have not been lazy, I have not polluted the river water, I have not eavesdropped, and I have not raised my voice. This comprehensive list of 42 denials covered virtually every aspect of life, ranging from serious felonies to minor, everyday transgressions. It is fascinating that the soul didn't simply proclaim, I was a good person. Instead, it actively and specifically denied having committed bad deeds. This reveals that for the Egyptians, true righteousness lay in the strict adherence to rules and the maintenance of cosmic harmony. Every word spoken during this confession had to be absolutely truthful, as the impending final judgment would instantly expose any lie. Once the confession was complete, the true test began, the psychostasia, or the weighing of the heart. The god, Anubis, would take the deceased's heart, which Egyptians believed housed the mind, conscience and memory and place it carefully on one pan of the scales. On the other pan, he would place the lightest object imaginable, the ostrich feather, the symbol of Maat, the goddess of truth and justice. Standing nearby was Thoth, the ibis-headed god of wisdom, ready to meticulously record the outcome on a papyrus scroll. This monumental scene unfolded under the watchful gaze of Osiris and the 42 divine assessors. The silence in the hall was absolute. Everything hinged on this precise moment. If the heart, burdened by sins, lies, or wicked intentions, outweighed the feather, the result was utter failure. However, if the heart proved to be as light as, or even lighter than the feather, it was proof of a virtuous and righteous life. The scales finally came to rest. If the heart proved heavier than the feather of Maat, the verdict was instantaneous and absolute. Lurking beside the scales was a terrifying beast named Ammit, or sometimes Ammit, known simply as the devourer of souls. Ammit was a hybrid monstrosity, the head of a crocodile, the forequarters of a lion, and the hindquarters of a hippopotamus, the three creatures the ancient Egyptians feared most. The instant the scales tipped against the deceased, Ammit would lunge forward and consume the wicked heart. This act didn't signify eternal damnation or hellish torment, but something far more terrifying, the complete and final annihilation of the self. The soul simply ceased to exist, dissolving into oblivion. This was the second death, and it was the fate the Egyptians dreaded above all others. No redemption, no chance for rebirth, just an absolute end, utter nothingness. But if the heart survived the ordeal, the Hall of Two Truths would pronounce a joyous verdict. Osiris would then declare the deceased Ma-Keru, the true of voice, or the justified one. Horus, the son of Osiris, would take the triumphant soul by the hand and lead them before his father's throne. With judgment passed, the gates to the Fields of Iaru, or the reed fields, were now opened. This was the Egyptian paradise. However, it was not a place of idle rest or endless leisure. Instead, the Fields of Iaru represented an idealized, perpetually fertile version of the Nile Valley itself. Drought and famine were unknown here. The harvests were always bountiful, and the irrigation canals perpetually full. The justified soul would receive their own plot of land, which they were expected to cultivate. But to ensure they didn't have to toil, they were supplied with their Ushabti servant figures, who would magically come to life and perform all the necessary labour. The soul could then enjoy eternal bliss, meeting with the gods and their ancestors, living perpetually in peace and abundant prosperity, and so concludes this incredible journey. The ancient Egyptian afterlife was far more than just a static picture of heaven or hell. It was a dynamic, perilous, and magical quest, where existence itself hung in the balance. Every single detail mattered immensely, from the amulet placed around the mummy's neck to the specific spell inscribed in the Book of the Dead. The Egyptians didn't just believe in an afterlife, they engineered the most detailed survival manual for it. This profound dedication reveals how deeply they valued order, knowledge, and justice, the core principles of Maat. Their entire world was interwoven with the idea of the eternal cycle. The sun dies and is reborn, the Nile floods and recedes, and humanity, mirroring these natural rhythms, could die only to achieve everlasting life. Thank you for joining us on this journey. If you enjoyed this exploration, please make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the notification bell. Now, a final question for you. If your heart were weighed on the scales of Maat today, would it prove lighter than the feather of truth? Let us know what you think in the comments below.